Hi everyone, I'm Terry of Wastebin Productions, the co-creator of Wastebin Productions, and your host of whatever the hell we're gonna do with this. So I have with me three other lovely individuals who would like to introduce themselves, I'm sure.
Hi, I'm John. That's it.
The audio master over there.
That is one thing I'm bringing to the table, and speaking of table, I have been playing mostly D&D 5e for the last year and a half or so. I have some limited Pathfinder experience, but 5e is really my bread and butter. And if you guys ever get a chance to play a game called Torchbearer, if you've ever been playing D&D and thought, man, I really like worrying about resource consumption and carry weight, Torchbearer is the game for you.
My name is Micah. I am married to Terry. Woo!
I'm sorry.
Don't know why that's important. But I've been playing.
I'm trying not to be hurt by
I
that.
think you had a whole ceremony about how important it was.
Yeah, we had a whole thing about it. Like, we swore to...
She's taking off the ring.
Alright. Oh.
Anyway, I've been playing tabletop RPGs since I was a sophomore in high school, which is about, 10 years now. So I started with D&D 3rd edition was my very first play, and I had a wonderful DM. Then he graduated, and I didn't get to play for about 5 or 6 years. So I guess technically not 10 years. But I took RPG back up when I got introduced to this lovely game, Elemantra, by its creator, Caleb.
Hi, my name is Caleb. I am the creator of Elemantra, which has been my brain baby since about the end of 6th grade. So this is old, but pretty great. Experience with tabletop gaming, mostly actually experience from Vampire's Last Masquerade was where I first started playing, and then got thrown into D&D with nothing explained to me about what I was doing or what character I was creating. So that was a really, really fun moment of me asking, why am I rolling this?
Fair enough.
Yeah.
All right. Well, since I'm an idiot and I forgot to give my background in RPGs, I've been playing also since sophomore year, but since I'm older than you, I've been playing longer, and I never took a break. Ever. But I have experience GMing D&D 3.5 mostly, my favorite. Pathfinder, which is basically D&D 7.5, or 3.75, which is great. I love Warhammer 40k, so I dabbled in the Rogue Trader and Dark Heresy RPGs. Never really turned out really well because percentiles are mind-numbing. And so yeah, and I intend to run a Starfinder campaign taking place in a homebrew universe. I guess we should start from the beginning with you, Caleb.
Little baby 6-year-old Caleb.
Little baby sixth grader.
6-year-old, damn.
He was actually 6 years old in 6th grade.
Yeah, little do you know, I was a genius, and then...
Wasn't.
Before
very
the
suddenly.
So you know.
Got hit by a car and suddenly was not a genius.
Remember that little comic about how D&D turns you to Satan?
Oh my god.
There it is. Alright, so why don't you go ahead and tell our listeners what Elemantra is?
So, Elemantra is a... it's a tabletop game that takes place within our own world. Unlike most other versions of a tabletop game that take place in a fantasy realm or universe, this one takes place typically in the time frame of now. So it's modern age for most playthroughs unless specified by the GM itself.
Who has, up until recently, always been you.
Not true, actually.
Oh. So someone else is GM
Other
your
people have GM. Other people know this game well enough. Mostly the other two people help create it.
Sure.
So that would be Heather and Sam.
I was wondering, yeah.
Okay.
But then beyond that, you are a quoted normal person who eventually one day awakens to have elemental abilities. In Elemantra, there are 24 elements. Each of the elements come in groups of 4. considering where they fall on a technical compass and the actual design overlay piece of Elemantra itself. So base elements are water, fire, earth, and air. So a very typical standpoint, a most common elemental ingredient. The next ones are called mixed elements, which are light, darkness, leaf, and steel. The outer rim elements are ice, lightning, sound, and sand. An inner circle grouping of elements is, almost forgot, spirit, chamber, time, holy. Then we have the wild elemental grouping of nova, geo, animalism, and wood. And then the forgotten, or even some point we'd even consider like the actual first element, which is explained within the lore of gravity, star, mystic, and fate.
All right. So we're not going to get into crazy detail about what each of these things are, but we do have, as players, we've already decided what elements we are. So we might delve into those a little bit. So John, why don't you tell us about your character?
First off, the element that will be my focus is Nova, which is the negation element. So no actual element of my own. I negate other elements around me. So I can either completely depower someone or partially depower someone. I can absorb someone's power. And as I understand it, I can't use it, but I can poison it and give it back to them. Is that how the...
reflection ability, kind of, yes. Your other ability of trap is where you can actually place that elemental energy into the ground or on a certain item. Whenever an elemental walks through that area, it will detonate, almost like a landmine.
Okay, does it detonate only when crossed by the elemental that I took it from, or
no, any elemental that will cross over it will
Sweet.
Activate it.
So I can absorb incoming power and put magic rune, not magic. Nothing in this game is magic, right?
Nothing in this game is magic.
Okay, elemental runes on the ground that are little landmines of power.
Correct.
Sweet. Character is Carlo Caffiero, named after a famous Italian anarchist who spent most of his life in and out of insane asylums. Some of that was because his enemies put him there, and some of that was because he was insane. So what was often said of him was, if his mind was broken, his heart was strong. So, he's from Berkeley, California. He has a background in investigation. That's a career I chose for him. And looks like he is going to be a bit of a Swiss Army knife. He's got a backpack full of junk that I hope will come in handy. It's mostly rope. It's all rope.
Would you make the freaking rope?
That's an Irishman just ran through.
And Micah, why don't you tell us about your lovely character?
Alright, well, I've played Elemantra a couple of times now, and I wanted to experiment with the idea of playing an international character. So I am playing a character named Go Yun. They are 24. He's from Zhengzhou, China, and he went to school for... I've also never played a male, so that's the other thing. I've always wanted to play a male character. And he was very bright, had a bright future, was getting ready to go to school, went to school for a couple years, and wanted to study English and teach English. So that's one of the reasons I'm not going to have any accent, because I have a very good English accent due to my linguistics. I can speak. Can't you tell? I'm such a linguist. Go Yun is a chamber, which is basically this game's equivalent of a summoner. Is kind of how I've always seen it. He has the ability to summon weapons from an elemental plane. Is that kind of the idea of it?
Yeah. So chamber elementals typically are considered one of the gatekeeper elements. So as they summon, they actually draw from ports of their body that get marked with the elemental symbol they can summon. So let's say if your character can summon a water element, you would pull from that water tattoo area, pulling out the weapon. Now the weapon will be the base weapon of whatever the classic weapon of that element is.
Mm-hmm.
So
Which is described in your fancy schmancy portfolio of elements.
Correct. So for an example, with water, their weapon is an aquatic whip. It is almost completely made of water. It looks solid and feels solid, but it's constantly in motion and can extend its weight and size to actually wrap around, pull, or slash. Now, with you being a chamber elemental, you have another ability called contract. Contract is where if you don't like that weapon, or if you've damaged that weapon too much, because in this game, weapons do not regenerate, they do take damage, so that's why there is a consistency of being careful with the tools that you have. You break it, you can contract another weapon to fill in for the new water.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as a side note of, you can either take care of what you have, or if you're Carlo, you just have a backpack full of tire irons, hammers.
Excuse you, it's rope.
And rope.
And rope.
And rope. Likely they're tied together, so we just
I do want to point out that although Carlo is slightly insane, he does have a humanity rating of 6, which
Damn.
I'm told is pretty good.
Yeah, it means he really likes people, but it's really strange.
He really likes them when they're not alive anymore.
Also, can we talk about the fact really quick, going back to Carlo, that he has burns all over his face and that he has an appearance rating of 0?
Out of game explanation, I didn't want to waste any of my valuable skill points on appearance, so I have an appearance rating of 0.
Super charismatic, super
So
personable.
I'm hoping that I can
Ugly
get us out
as
of a
fuck.
situation by just making a guard throw up by taking my bandana off. But most of the time, I'll be wearing a bandana across my face with a hoodie pulled low to save people the trouble of looking at me.
Anyway. Oh,
Also,
that's
to
a
be
shame.
clear, the burns made me uglier. I was already quite ugly.
Anyway, so back to your chamber.
So, but yeah, Chamber is an interesting one, and I've always wanted to play it. After a wonderful NPC that we had in one of our games was a badass, so I kind of want to just be a badass.
Rest in peace, Charlie.
Oh, Charlie!
She's not dead, she just hasn't gotten a revival point in another game yet.
Fair enough.
He dropped out of school after his father passed in order to take care of his little sister and his mother, who could not work after the loss, continues not to work after the loss for like 5 years.
So I decided to play an element that's relatively simple. I decided to play a lightning.
The only thing simple about his
The
character
only thing simple
is his
about my
element.
character is my element, because I'm technically playing 2 characters. As I am playing Carter Shaw, a man with a split personality. His split is named Ivan Shank, and is in fact Russian. It will be fun. I promise. It's the one accent I can do without people getting pissed at me. By people, I mean Caleb. By Caleb, I mean he gets pissed at me too, but he'll get over it. It'll be fine. I've got to differentiate between the characters somehow. Stop grinning at me like that. He's gonna kill him. So as a lightning, it's very straightforward. I can electrocute people. I got storm abilities. I can magnetize things by changing their ions and positive negativeness. Yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot of super fancy.
To note, when he says storm abilities, not like a certain character from a comic book Storm, but as he generates electrical energy, he will cause electrical ions to charge within the air and then cause a massive thunderbolt to come down on top of a selected area.
Lightning bolt.
I'm sorry, not Pokemon.
Yeah,
Lightning
we're
bolt.
not playing.
Lightning
Thunderbolt
bolt.
would just be obnoxious. Be like, that was
Lightning
loud.
That was loud and obnoxious, and my eardrums are now ruptured. I mean, actually, I could make use of that.
That's a good sound ability. We'll talk.
We'll talk. So, Ivan, we'll talk about him since he's the actual elemental carrier, because Carter is a regular human as far as his body knows. And so, Ivan is the actual elemental within him, caused through having to cope with being cope with a military life. Carter has no killing edge. He just can't do it. Whereas Ivan has no such restraint. And in fact, might enjoy killing. I'm not sure yet. We'll get there. They were in the ex-military. He's ex-military. He was a shock trooper. Pun achieved, not intended. So there's that. Yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot else I can tell you about Ivan and Carter, because the elemental's nice and simple.
Where are you from?
Carter's from L.A. Ivan thinks he's from St. Petersburg. So that's fun. Ivan actually believes that he's 20 years old, and Carter is 22. Decided to play a young, strapping lad, unlike myself, who is old and 30.
So, a question about your differentiation of age in your characters. What is your thought process behind that for this?
I figured that Ivan would be younger. I don't think that he would be as old as Carter, considering that he was a recent creation. So it wasn't a he hasn't experienced as much as, and it's more 20 is like an obscure age, but that's kind of what he thinks he is, so we'll go with that. But he is definitely mentally younger than Carter.
Okay.
So, timeline-wise, I guess.
And to be clear, you were telling me it's a fairly functional split personality in the sense that they are aware of each other and their necessity to their continued
Yeah, they are
survival.
cohabitants of the body that is Carter. Carter is
They're
aware.
symbiotic.
They're symbiotic. Thank you. Love you for a
I
reason.
didn't get a thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
You're welcome.
He loves you for a reason.
I love you for a reason. They are symbiotic in that Carter understands his need for Ivan and Ivan understands his need for Carter. And they have it's not that whole trope of, oh, I'm weak and I need this thing to protect me. It's more like, I need him to do this one thing that I can't do. I can protect myself. Carter is a capable fighter. He's just doesn't have the capability to kill, the capacity to kill. So
What does Ivan gain from the relationship?
Ivan likes to fight. So as long as Carter's living, Ivan gets to fight more.
So it's the balance of just wanting to survive versus thrill-seeking.
Yeah, we'll go with that. That's pretty fun. So moving on to our next question.
Yeah.
Caleb, this is the one I'm really excited to ask you because I don't think I've ever gotten an answer from you. If you had to pick an element that is your favorite, what would it be?
So you have asked me this before. However, I always told you I love them all equally. They're all my children.
Right.
That's a lie. I do actually have a favorite. The first element that I actually tested out myself completely, like without having anyone else around to test, roll, and make sure it worked, was the element sand, actually.
Oh, well,
So-
why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about sand, a little blurb.
So let me
you did almost play a sand.
let me touch my character sheets papers over here. Yeah.
Those need to get redone.
Yeah, these, fun fact, the papers I'm using are from the first creation. So these papers are old. So, so sand elementals have the power of disintegration, which is how they can form sand itself. The thing with sand is that they are almost useless to a point, and I made them like this for a reason, because their offensive ability is disintegration. They form sand. They make sand.
All right.
All right, so I mean it's pretty simple.
Super offensive.
Yeah, super offensive. Their next ability they have is it's a trope. It's called quicksand. Think of it almost like how movies make quicksand look. Quicksand doesn't suck you in and trap you like that. It's just if you stand in it, it will begin to pull on you and it will be hard for you to get out. If you stand in it for hours on end, yes, you will get pulled into this pit. But most of the time, quicksand pits aren't like 20 feet deep. They're maybe a foot at most from what I've seen and looked up at this time of 6th grade.
The research available at my fingertips when I was 6.
Whenever I was in middle school.
When I was 6
And
and I was in
everything-
6th grade.
Which involved asking one of the lunch ladies what she thought of quicksand, and I have taken that as gospel ever since.
And I have taken it as gospel. I trusted her and her eye patch and mustache.
Fair enough.
Fun fact, I almost played a sand,
That's
but
fantastic.
she was going to be Inuit.
That's fantastic. And
Maybe next
awkward.
Next time,
Super
what's
awkward.
sand?
Why is my snow turning grainy?
What?
Now, the next ability they have, because every element also, I should point out, has 3 abilities. Whenever this first created, they only actually had 2. So, this is a game that also evolves, like, addition-wise, kind of like other games. Third ability-wise is obliteration, which sounds completely terrifying. It does not obliterate. It's how they can wrap sand and manipulate it to form into shapes or crushing blows.
Okay.
Now, sand, once again, like I said, it's sand. It's one of the only elements that whenever you think about, it's easy to knock down, it's easy to rebuild. They're meant to do quick attacks or to slow people down,
Sure.
which is what I thought was missing at the point of making this game. Whenever I only had up to 8 elements, I didn't have an element that was solely meant to
Debuff.
debuff people. How times have changed.
How times have changed. 24 elements.
24. There are actually 8 other elements that are in work,
Oh, yeah.
but to explain them, they are a specialty set that is used in certain games whenever humanity tries to mimic elemental abilities, and these are considered like disgusting synthetic creatures. So, for an example, there is a glass element, a smoke, a bone, etc., things like that. To where
Paper.
there's a paper element. The reason behind that is expanding into elements because, yes, there are 24 elements, but with enough playthroughs, you can play all of them.
Right.
I myself, I'm 6th grade, but I've played all of them and I've gone through everything, including the 2 elements I'm really picky about people playing, which are Mystic and Fate, but they have reasons.
Yeah. Oh, all right. Well, I'm glad I finally have an answer on that. I guess another really important question is, what is the optimum number of players?
So I've always based my optimum number of players around the idea of a classic RPG game. Sure. So normally in those games, you have a party of 3 to 5 characters that you can choose, switch between, or even use all at one time. In my opinion, 4 is the absolute best number.
Sure.
Comparison-wise, you can have like a healing class, a melee class, a range class, and then you can have an intermediate or like a shield debuffing class.
Sure.
To where you can keep everyone in balance and in check.
Makes sense.
Beyond that, I feel like in a lot of games where you have a lot of people playing at one time, it's hard to keep the story going and focusing on the actual objective and goals. So for me, once I hit 5 people, I become hesitant about adding a 6th or 7th.
Sure.
Unless they are completely focused into what they are doing, their role in the game.
That makes sense. All right.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how optimum would you consider our current group?
Current group of 3, I would give you guys about 7.5.
7.5 is a good.
I mean, 7.5. What'll happen is, like in games that have 3 people, even like I had before with another game that I played with Terry and Micah, I played an NPC to fill in whenever a 4th person wasn't there, who just became slightly integral to the story at certain points. So this character just popped in whenever I felt like it would come in handy, which will also happen in this game. I will have an NPC that I will throw in every now and then.
Sure.
It might not be the same NPC each time, but it will be an NPC that I will jump in and help out, because I have made things kind of difficult, because 2 out of 3 people playing have played before, and one of them has been playing D&D for years. So I figure I don't need to pull any punches.
That's fair. Yeah, no, and I honestly, if you pulled punches, I'd be upset with you, because I always want to try and kill off my character, but obviously not in the way of, I don't want to like purposefully jump off a cliff, but I want my character to have like that scary life or death situation where like my character could very well die if this dice roll goes wrong. Mm-hmm. I love that. It puts me so much on edge, and also I love making characters, so.
Which is another thing, actually, on the character sheet itself. There's a tab section called Elemental Cost. Every character comes with 10 elemental costs they can use. As level 1s, up to a certain point, whenever you use them, what will happen is you will mark them off completely. At the end of certain combat situations or resting periods, you will regain those. The first 10 are free. The next 5 come at a higher difficulty of rolling. So in this game, it's a D20 system.
Sure.
I like keeping things very simple, very concise, and easy to follow, because that's one of the reasons why I made this game. Was after playing D&D, I didn't know why I was rolling. I didn't know why I was doing all these extra things to do the one thing I wanted to do. Partially because I had people not explaining it to me to begin with. That's nothing against D&D. I love D&D.
Yeah, no, it's usually a GM thing. It's
a GM that didn't explain things, and so I wanted to make Elemantra really easy to get into. The character sheet is simple. I mean, I took parts of other character sheets I liked, things I didn't like, things that I wanted and didn't want, broke them apart, and reorganized them in a way.
Yeah.
But with Elemental Cost, back to that, the difficulty is a 15 to succeed, adding dots into it wherever you would like, depending on what you're rolling. So it goes from a 15 up to an 18, which is kind of high, but at most point whenever this happens, hopefully people have more dots into the specific category of elements to where they can add up to maybe 5.
Right.
Makes it a little easier. If you fill up the next ones, the final 5, they cause damage to your character. So you might succeed, but you will also harm yourself completely. If you fill up all 20 of these dots, whenever you roll again to do an elemental attack, you have to get a natural 20. If you don't, you become consumed, which is a semi-thing of like being a thrill-seeker moment, like you were mentioning, for your characters, like trying to kill them off kind of thing in like a non-terrifying manner.
Right, exactly. Like, not suicidal, just, you know,
pushing the limit.
Pushing the limit of the character.
So, whenever you do that, you become what's called a consumed. A consumed is whenever your character loses all functionality of themselves and are just a massive energy of that elemental power. So oftentimes they can either become to what is selected as the animal of the element. So for an example, you playing a lightning, if you push it too far, you could become this anamorphous electrical energy that would be blasting powerful lightning bolts everywhere, or you could actually become what can be considered a falcon made of lightning.
Oh, that's fun. Definitely don't want to do that. I do. I want to be.
Oh,
I want to be a
okay,
lightning falcon. I want to be a lightning falcon so bad.
I
Okay.
don't understand.
Yeah, so that's why I like mentioning things about the character sheet just like there and pushing things to the limit.
Yeah, and as for character sheets, we will be posting these on whatever format we decide to use. We haven't
Enter
released
format here.
Tumblr, whatever we decide. We will post our character sheets regularly as they update. Probably okay. So Micah,
I'll make a Tumblr.
Micah will make a Tumblr for us because I'm
Or
not
Wastebin.
social media savvy. As tech savvy as I am not. I don't understand social media. It's not my thing. It's not my place. I stay away from it. I guess this brings us to our final question, which is kind of I'm going to tie in two questions into one. It fits. So what can we expect from this game? Like, what's the theme? And what is the ultimate goal of an adventure in general in Elemantra?
Yeah, sure thing. So with this game, it's going to take place in... it's a made-up city that I just kind of formed in my head because I like placing things where they shouldn't necessarily belong when it comes to, like, map-wise.
Sure.
So,
What? I never would have guessed! Elemantra is nothing like that.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's sarcasm. Sarcasm, everybody.
she's about to hit him with some dice.
I deserve it.
So with this game, you're going to take place in a city called Arkalum City. Arkalum is a place hidden in pretty much central Montana that no one seems... You've heard about it in this game before, but you've never been there. You've never heard anybody visiting or leaving. You're just like, it's a place. You have no idea the population. You're like, what really goes on there? Yeah. It's like small towns, for example, in Missouri. I doubt anybody that I say this to will know where or what Olean is.
Nope. I live in Missouri. Have no idea.
And I lived in Olean for years. It is a village on the outskirts of a small city named Eldon. If you know where that is, congrats.
I do know where Eldon is.
Cool. So
I also
For
don't
no
know where that
reason.
is.
So yeah. So
Yeah, you could totally be making stuff up right now.
I really
like,
could.
wait, there's a whole state
I live in
outside KC? Then what are you talking about?
So anyway, the city here, it's without getting too spoilery, weird things have been noted to happen here from people. When you hear rumors like, oh yeah, no, there was like an ice storm over there, no one can get in right now, or
In the middle of summer.
right.
Right.
Or it just seems like, oh yeah, they lost power, or like I went there and I just decided not to go there anymore, like I just changed my mind.
Right. Okay. That's pretty fun.
Yeah. You wanted expectations of games in general, or like...
The final goal of an Elemantra game in general.
Okay, so within Elemantra, there are 24 people named judges. Judges are the first person to master that element. So judges are ancient most of the time. However, because they are judges, they can appear in any which way they would prefer. They can be elderly looking, they can be extremely young, or they can honestly not even have a human form anymore and just be ghost-like in certain situations. The goal of Elemantra, at least what I call like the part one of the story,
Sure.
is getting your characters to level up and meeting all 24 of the judges, which is a requirement in every game unless noted different if you're trying to do a different style of game.
Sure.
So in this one, you're going to be meeting your 24 judges and gaining their approval. Approval is pivotal to an elemental that's upcoming in this area because as you are growing, your element is growing alongside. Your element grows faster and more rapid than your human body can naturally handle. So what happens when you gain the approval of a judge, it's almost like buffering it to where your element won't harm you. Push away the fact that your elemental self is gaining more power rapidly than your human self, pushing you away from being consumed.
All right. So
Yeah, any other like questions or like worries, concerns, or...
no, I think that's it. I mean, I know that I'm particularly excited. One of my all-time favorite characters I've ever made in my huge, vast experience of RPGs was my first character in Elemantra. Love that boy. Nogi is the best, and he has reappeared in almost every one of the campaigns I've GM'd since, so that's pretty fun.
Speaking of which, as a person who made this game, I have set the 24 natural judges, like just in general, like if I use them, if I'm using basic judge, I will use the same name, it's the same character over and over again. I will change minor things about them, but also from a creative standpoint, whenever I play these games, I make notes on characters that I thoroughly enjoyed, and I reuse them throughout different games. So
Right.
One of the first games that was ever completed, there was a duo character that was just NPCs, a girl named Callan and a steel named Rikos. The girl named Callan was a sound elemental, and what they were able to do was combine their abilities to actually make sound rods when they were the characters that were playing were the first testers, Heather and Sam. They were fighting a sand judge, and Heather's my queen of botches, so she just kept rolling like 1s and 2s, and Sam missed everything pretty much because he was a darkness fighting sand. So these two NPCs were pivotal in the moment that he ran around placing metal rods throughout all of his turns. He was just encompassing the sand judge. Eventually, he brought up all the metal rods, and Callan used her sound ability to magnify vibrations through. Because in Elemantra, there are elements that are considered cancel effect. So water is to fire as earth is to air, is a very standpoint kind of thing. But sound and sand are considered opposites in this situation. So as sand is vibrated beyond its point of consistency and stability, it will fall apart.
Okay.
So it couldn't form anymore. Whereas if enough sand is over on top of a speaker, let's say, for an example, it will drown out the sound completely.
Right. That makes
so
sense.
It's a balancing issue of which one's more powerful and which one can be amplified more to actually distract and destroy.
Alrighty then. Well, I mean, I'd be honored if Nogi was reused.
He will.
I love that boy. So
Probably
much.
in this game.
Yay, Nogi! So yeah, I guess that's everything. And thanks for listening to episode 0. I know it's really rough and unstructured, but that's kind of the intent of this first thing. It's kind of like, here's an example of who we are as people, and also what we're doing.
Probably should have mentioned the goddesses. Whoops.
Well, we'll get there.
We'll get there. There's a lore episode coming out to actually explain why elementals exist. Much later, hopefully.
Much later. But yeah, we'll delve into all this kind of stuff later. Hopefully we'll have a Tumblr up and running at some point. We'll have Caleb's wonderful art for his elemental symbols and whatnot going on. But yeah, so thanks for tuning in to Wastebin Productions' first episode. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed our introductory episode. Episode 1's already up and ready for you to listen to, so just go ahead and check that out. Thanks, guys, and take care.